Yesterday, I did a video about my sex drive, but I think a crucial and interlinked component to sex drive that was under discussed or not discussed at all in that video is the drive for affection, of which mine is also extremely strong, and for the longest time it hamstringed which partners I could even choose from, because I would want to hug and kiss and give affection all the time. And so of course, because my nature is that affectionate, is that obsessive, is that touchy-feely, it limits the pool of potential partners I can have, because a lot of people simply don't like having that much physical contact. They don't like being hugged constantly and kissed constantly and touched and have their hair petted and to randomly have their ass and breasts grabbed while they're doing ostensibly normal things. These are all things that I like to do. I like to kiss every part of my wife's body. I like to lick every part of my wife's body. Not even sexually. I mean, I guess there's a sexual component to it. It's kind of warming up for the big you-know-what. But at the same time, a lot of the time, I just do these things because they feel so good to do. It feels so good for me to express my love and affection for her on a physical level. And this is how I experience romance. This is how romance works for me. I'm even affectionate with friends, obviously not like that, but with friends of mine, I want to give them hugs, I want to pat them on the back or pat them on the head, as I have sometimes. I have a tendency to tackle people. I'm just like a physical guy. And so of course, when we enter the domain of romance, the physicality ramps up 1,000%. And for some people, that's going to be a red line. They don't want to be touched that much. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm with someone who does want to be touched that much, and for all of the other reasons why I'm lucky to be with my very special person. But that's how I experience this. And I think it's because on a visceral level, it makes me feel like I'm relating with another person, like I'm expressing my gratitude for their existence. When I touch them, when I hug them, when I kiss them, when I feel them, each of those actions says so much more than I can with a few words. The words "I love you" may carry a lot of weight, but the weight of those words is ultimately determined by the actions that precede and supersede them. And little moments of affection, like feeling and touching and physicality, like the things that we create for the ones that we love, the gifts that we give them, the ways that we choose to improve ourselves for them, these are actions. And love is ultimately an action, as I've explained, but physicality is one way that we can express our love as an action. And it ends up once again saying so much more than what words can say. And I think that intuition, that visceral intuition I have in regards to affection, leads me to have a very high drive for affection. And it leads me to behave, think, and feel this way. There are a lot of videos on my channel about how to be alone without being lonely. This idea that if you just engage with your hobbies and your interests and you're working on yourself and you're doing your own thing, you can be alone without being lonely. That's a notion that I firmly believe in, but at the same time, we're all human and we want connections with other people. There are some people out there who have perhaps schizoid personality disorder, and they really are like safe, hid off in their little room, only wanting to observe, never wanting to engage. But most of us aren't like that, and so even for people who are introverted and autistic like myself, we do have that drive to connect with others and to be with others. The question ultimately is, how does that play out? And in my case, there was a lot of deliberation and a lot of time spent in my room and a lot of work on myself before I found someone that I could settle down with and that I could be physical with on a regular basis. And I think that time spent on oneself is necessary because affection is great. Feeling another person is great, but it has to stand up. And what do I mean by that? Affection has to stand up, like on two legs? What I mean by that is there are shallow forms of affection where they're not backed up by anything. You're just sort of mindlessly kissing and hugging and touching and feeling. Nothing against those actions. I mean, pleasure is pleasure and pleasure is good. But at the same time, if we really want to live happy lives, we've got to look a little bit deeper than that. And there are even times when that type of physical affection, when it's being done in a context where you have one person or two people who are abusive, that kind of physical affection can muddy the waters and actually perpetuate a bad cycle. And so I would describe that as shallow affection. What we really need is quality affection. So I have this drive for affection, but I also have standards. And that's why I married my wife and not some other person, because I saw quality when it was in front of me, and I clamored for quality. And that's what you ought to do as well. You know, you can't just take the first bitch that walks through the door. You have to take your time sifting through and find someone who is going to treat you with respect and whom you will treat with respect as well, because it's a two-way street. It goes both ways. And while this drive for affection is here and will be satiated at some point, I don't think it should be of the utmost importance or of preeminent importance. You know, working on yourself should be the number one thing. Because if you don't work on yourself, and if you don't improve as a person, if you don't know how to separate the wheat from the chaff, in other words, how to separate potentially bad partners from potentially good ones or really, really good ones, then you could have a lot of affection with someone, but it's not going to be quality affection. It's going to be mediocre slop at the end of the day, because while you are getting warmth from another, while you are communicating, expressing yourself, that affection is shallow. It's not standing on something that is hard and foundational. You need to be planted firmly into the ground. Your affection needs to be planted down firmly. And what's going to hold it up are things like a quality relationship, things like mutual respect and love towards one another, the kind that lasts. And so I have a high drive for affection, but I also have standards, and you should have standards as well, or else your lot in life is not going to be great. It is not going to be looking great for you folks. The peanut gallery is not going to be having the best of times. I'll put it like that.